Imagine waking up in a cold, smoky hut made of mud and straw. There's no alarm clock, only the rooster's crow and the sound of wind whistling through cracks in the walls. You roll off your straw bed, hungry already, knowing you have 14 hours of hard labor ahead. Welcome to the life of a medieval peasant, the backbone of the Middle Ages, yet the group most often overlooked in history books. Today, we're diving deep into how these ordinary people managed to survive centuries of hardship, famine, disease, and oppression, and still keep life going. For most peasants, life revolved around the manor, the estate owned by a lord. They didn't own their land. Instead, they worked it in exchange for protection and the right to grow food for their families. A typical day began before sunrise. Men went to the fields to plow, sow, or harvest, depending on the season. Women cooked, cleaned, spun wool, tended gardens, and raised children. Even kids as young as 6 helped herd animals or fetch water. They ate 2 main meals a day: thick vegetable stew called pottage, black bread made from barley or rye, and maybe a bit of cheese or salted meat, if they were lucky. Clean water was rare, so many drank weak ale instead. It wasn't glamorous, but it was life. Medieval peasants lived in simple cottages, often just one room shared by the whole family, and sometimes the animals too, especially in winter for warmth. The floor? Packed dirt. The walls? Wattle and daub, a mix of sticks, mud, and dung. Furniture was minimal: a table, some stools, a straw mattress, and maybe a chest for clothing. Smoke from the cooking fire filled the house because chimneys were rare. Windows had no glass, only wooden shutters or cloth. Yet, despite the harshness, villages were tight-knit communities. People helped one another, sharing tools, gossip, and bread. When someone was sick, neighbors would pitch in to care for their crops or animals. It was a world of survival through cooperation, not competition. The biggest struggle for peasants wasn't just the back-breaking labor, it was the system itself. Under feudalism, lords owned the land, and peasants, often called serfs, were bound to it. They had to give part of their harvest to the lord as rent and work his land a few days each week, known as corvée labor. They also paid taxes to the church, called tithes, usually 1/10 of their produce. That's right. After feeding their family and the Lord, the church took its share too. So, how did they survive? Through sheer endurance, clever resourcefulness, and communal strength. They wasted nothing. Every scrap of fabric was reused, every bone turned into tools, every vegetable boiled into stew. Nature was their greatest threat. Bad weather could destroy crops, leading to famine. During these times, peasants survived on anything edible: roots, bark, and even boiled weeds. And then there were diseases. The Black Death in the 14th century wiped out nearly half of Europe's population. Villages vanished overnight. But those who survived often found life a little better afterward. Less competition for land and higher wages for their labor. Still, the constant uncertainty taught peasants to live day by day. They relied on herbal remedies, prayers, and the hope that next year's harvest would be kinder. Despite their hardships, medieval peasants weren't joyless. Faith gave meaning to their struggles. The village church was the heart of every community, hosting baptisms, weddings, funerals, and feast days. There were festivals after harvest time with singing, dancing, games, and plenty of ale. These moments of joy helped peasants endure the monotony and pain of everyday life. Even storytelling was a form of escape. Legends of knights, saints, and miracles passed down by the firelight kept hope alive. Their resilience wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. Over time, the world began to shift. As trade and towns grew, peasants slowly gained more freedom. Some escaped the manors to become free townsfolk or merchants. Others joined revolts, like the Peasants' Revolt of 1381 in England, demanding better treatment and fairer laws. Though many of these uprisings failed, they planted the seeds of change. The hard work and persistence of peasants laid the foundation for the middle class, and, ultimately, the modern world. So how did medieval peasants survive? They worked tirelessly, shared everything, adapted constantly, and never gave up hope. Their lives may have been humble, but without them, castles would have crumbled, kingdoms would have starved, and history itself might have never moved forward. They were the quiet strength of the Middle Ages, the people who endured so the world could evolve.